Spygate Part 2. It's better than the first part, so enjoy it.
Part 3, starring Charlie Sheen as Bill Belichick or something like that.
All right, everybody, Michael Cohen here with you on Sports Talk Nation. Welcome aboard, and today we are going to talk about the Mets and Carlos Beltran parting ways, as the Mets decided that there was not much else they could do at this point, and they and Carlos Beltran agreed that it was time to move on. Beltran very much in the thick of this Houston Astros sign-stealing scandal, so the Mets now in the search for a new manager to lead this team. There's a lot of names out there, so we're going to try to piece together who that could be. Now, on this episode, we're going to have a discussion about that. I'm going to have a special guest on, and joining me to talk about this will be Rick Laughland, who is the editor of Amazin Clubhouse on Maven.com. So let's go right to the interview.
Here on the Sports Talk Nation, Michael Cohen with Rick Laughland, editor of Amazin Clubhouse, which is part of the Maven Network and Sports Illustrated. And before we get shut out again, Rick, we've been trying to get this going for a while now. I think just trying to start this video has lasted longer than Carlos Beltran's tenure as Mets manager, for that matter.
That's probably not too far from the truth, Michael. And for me, I'm pointing the finger, and not solely, but mostly at Brodie Van Wagenen. 2 months ago, Carlos Beltran hired as the manager. He was supposed to be properly vetted, even at that introductory press conference when the Mets announced his hiring. Van Wagenen faced several questions about, what made Beltran the best candidate. Why did you select him over Joe Girardi? And he basically said that it was not about what Girardi didn't bring to the table. It was what Beltran did bring to the table, and that he thought that he could be that next manager to take them to that next step, even though it was a first time major league manager. And now look, 2 months after he's embroiled in this Astros sign stealing scandal, the fact that, the Mets faced a lot of pressure from Major League Baseball. The report that was out there was that on Wednesday night, the New York Mets, that includes Jeff Wilpon, Fred Wilpon, Brodie Van Wagenen, and Beltran, and the rest of the Mets brass, they met with representatives from Major League Baseball that probably detailed Carlos Beltran's involvement in this whole scheme, and that really persuaded them, I should say, to make the move and to part ways with Carlos Beltran, which I think you agree, Michael, is probably the right move for both parties.
Yeah, I agree. I've been saying, I said it in my last upload, and also the articles we've been posting up on the Amazin Clubhouse, that the Mets were really in a no-win situation. They had no choice but to make this move and separate themselves from Carlos Beltran. Imagine going into a season and had the Mets not done anything, had they done classic Wilpon Met behavior, which is to do nothing and just pretend that all the turmoil doesn't exist. This would have carried over into the season. It would have been a huge distraction for the team. You have a team that has a mix of young and veteran players. They don't need that. The franchise doesn't need that, and they don't have the leadership and stability, even in the front office, to withstand that kind of distraction from what's been taking place here with the scandal. And from everything that has been published, it sounds like Beltran has been heavily involved. Now, do we know specifically exactly what it is? No, we don't know exactly what it is, but he has been named for a reason. I don't think, unlike a lot of Met fans out there, or like some people on radio have been saying that Carlos Beltran was scapegoated. No, he was not. He was involved in some fashion, and involved intimately, for that matter, in some fashion in the scandal. So from that standpoint, the Mets had no choice but to rid themselves of Carlos Beltran as the manager.
And this goes beyond the wins and losses. It goes beyond, does he have an ability to manage the dugout? Beltran was the lone member that was listed in that report by Rob Manfred about that only still had a job, that was not let go of his duties. And the fact that the Mets had to see the larger picture here, even if they went on to have success, they won an NL East division, dare I say, they went to another World Series. I'm not even going to say they could win a World Series, but if they had any level of success, you would go and start questioning, as a Met fan, as a general baseball fan, is this valid? Is this a Bill Belichick situation where we're facing Spygate Part 2 in the NFL right now? And you made some comparisons. The comparison between how Roger Goodell handled Spygate the first time around with Bill Belichick, essentially giving a slap on the wrist, and the way Rob Manfred and the Houston Astros and New York Mets and Red Sox responded to this cheating scandal, to me, it is night and day. All those teams did the right thing. Major League Baseball could have taken things a step further, but they basically had meetings with each individual team that took it into their own hands. So as a baseball fan that wants to see, first and foremost, the integrity of the game stay intact, I am satisfied. I don't think Beltran deserved to manage this team. And the idea that a lot of the radio hosts, some say that this is overblown, this is all media driven. There was a lot of smoke to this situation. I mean, this goes back to 2017 with the Astros going back to that ALCS against the New York Yankees. This was really well known within MLB circles that this kind of illegal behavior was going on, and it wasn't addressed until Mike Fiers came out and outed everyone, which, Jessica Mendoza, who's a part-time ESPN analyst, she's a part-time Met employee. Yeah, she goes out and basically calls him out for being a whistleblower. I personally, how you feel? He did the right thing.
He did do the right thing, and that's another thing that you brought up is Jessica Mendoza. I don't know, maybe the Mets need to levy some kind of discipline on her for her comments. I know she's a member of the media, free press for that matter, but she's also, when she goes out there and she speaks about situations like this, I know Brodie Van Wagenen says she spoke as an ESPN employee, but she's also representing the Mets from that standpoint too whenever she speaks. So, maybe the Mets need to make a move with her, separate themselves from her, maybe let her go at some point. But to me, I think that ultimately this is going to lead from the Mets standpoint to a major house cleaning. It's not going to happen now. Obviously, we're too close to the season, but certainly come middle of the year, end of the year, if this team is not moving towards the postseason, you're going to see probably a lot of rumbling that maybe Brodie Van Wagenen will finally end up getting fired because I don't know how you botch a managerial search like this. How do you not ask questions about Carlos Beltran, or even after the fact when the story comes out, you don't even ask questions? You had almost 2.5 months to ask questions before spring training. You didn't do it.
And this is not a scandal that's fresh in everyone's mind that just happened in 2019 heading into 2020. This is going back to 2017. So, there was widespread knowledge that Beltran, Cora, Hinch, Luddow, the old GM of the Astros, were involved in this basically tactical plan to try to gain a competitive advantage. And, of course, Beltran spending last year with the Yankees, there were reports whether those were validated that, he was trying to bring some of those same practices over there. The MLB just did the right thing. They nipped this thing in the bud. They made sure that, they sent a stern message to other clubs that if they're going to try to participate or try to skirt the rules, that they're going to be, twofold is going to be the punishment. They're probably going to maybe face a lifetime ban for any managers that try to do this kind of thing. So for me, this falls squarely, and I think you hit it right on the head, on the shoulders of Brodie Van Wagenen. And there's either one of two scenarios. One, he knew about all this. He hoped that he could sweep it under the rug, and that Beltran, because he was a player, not a coach, would maybe escape some of the punishment from this. Or he basically didn't care. He just wanted Beltran to come in, do the same thing with the Mets, and said, hey, the Astros got away with it. They won a World Series. They went to 2 World Series the last 3 years. Let's see what he can do for the Mets. And you know what? I'm going to turn a blind eye. Either scenario is not good for the Mets, and for me, he has to be on thin ice. Depending on how the Mets finish this year. And unfortunately, again, it should go beyond wins and losses, because I don't think even if the Mets make the playoffs, it should save Brodie Van Wagenen's job, because just his incompetence so far and his decision making as far as hiring this manager, it's just totally embarrassing.
It really is, and I think that you bring a lot of good points there. One thing that's going to happen here, I think part of this was he wanted control. Brodie wanted complete control of the manager. It's part of the reason why the Mets didn't go after Joe Girardi. Part of the reason why they didn't even bother calling Buck Showalter or Dusty Baker. And I know those two names are out there now. It's not going to happen. Buck Showalter's not coming to Queens unless he's doing a game as an analyst for ESPN or something like that. Dusty Baker's not coming to Queens. It's not happening. And that leads to who's going to be the next manager. I think there's 2 guys that are very likely candidates, and we've heard their name throughout the last couple of days. That's Hensley Mullins, the bench coach for the Mets, and Luis Rojas. Mullins, I'm a little more interested in him as the manager because he's been around for a long time. He's an old-timer. He has been a bench coach for several years in San Francisco, was with Bruce Bochy and all those championships they won for all those years in the last decade. I'd be very interested in him being the manager of this team, and not just on an interim basis, but for at least a couple of years. You got to give him, the new manager, some security, knowing that, hey, I'm not coming in here just to be a fill-in until next year when they blow this whole thing up again. I would be interested in him being a manager for at least a 2 or 3 year contract. Luis Rojas, I don't know too much about him other than he was in the minor leagues as a manager. I don't know. I know a lot of fans are excited about him, but he's like as I wrote on one of the articles, he's the equivalent of the hot offensive coordinator in the NFL. We really don't know much about him other than that everyone likes him.
And unless Met fans are hoping that the Mets pull a Belichick type move where basically Joe Girardi, before he really even starts that job with the Phillies, that they go and sweep him out of Philadelphia. I think that's an unlikely scenario. I think Showalter is very unlikely. I even heard the rumor about Bruce Bochy luring him out of retirement. I think what you said, Mullins would be a terrific candidate. Rojas still, doesn't have a track record, doesn't have that polished resume, but certainly could be a candidate. And for me, again, I mean, he's 72 years of age, not getting any younger. But frankly, Terry Collins has been a guy that a lot of people have said can just step in, even as an interim, just for this year, just to kind of steady the franchise, has a familiarity with that dugout, clearly has a prominent role still with the Mets organization. He could be a candidate. But look, the Mets 26, 27 days away from spring training, along with the Red Sox now and Houston Astros, without a manager. I mean, this is really becoming a dire situation for them. And frankly, if you're Mets fans, you almost want to take the decision out of Brodie Van Wagenen's hands and say, look, we know what we get with Terry Collins. If they have Hansley Mullins on the staff, you can put him in there. You basically do not want Brodie Van Wagenen now to start doing another rounds of interviews, bringing in all sorts of people from all corners of baseball, because he's shown that really he can't be trusted as far as the hiring process is concerned. So you just hope, if you're a Met fan, they hire from within, either as the bench.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this Houston Astros thing gets more and more bizarre by the day. I mean, now we're hearing rumors that they were wired up on the field. Jose Altuve, people slowed down the video. You could see him saying, I have a piece. And he's like trying to hide the microphone that's under his shirt. I mean, it's getting absolutely insane. And I know Rob Manfred said, because of, mostly because of the players union, he can't go after the players for that matter. But, it seems like there's going to be a groundswell to change that very quickly here. And some of these players may start getting in trouble. And I think they have to start going after some of these guys in Houston.
Yeah, and even look back to the Red Sox-Yankees series when the Red Sox got in trouble for using Apple Watches. I mean, and you look even in the NFL, Belichick has a tablet that he's there looking at play formations. He's looking at all sorts of different things that are happening live in action instead of coaches' film, instead of the old school paper that they used to use. But there has to be a clear code of conduct for players, for coaches, and basically that center field camera that was used for training minor league prospects that would show the catcher, that would show the spin, that would show the grip, that has to be cut off to players that are participating in the game, or anybody that can have contact with the coaches or players during the game. I mean, it's just basic stuff. But again, baseball is trying to, even though it's a little behind the times, is trying to embrace new technology. And I think along with that, you have some players and coaches that are trying to take advantage of these advances in technology. And it's the job of Major League Baseball to police it. And Rob Manfred and his commissioner's office has to put in a clear set of code of conduct in order for them to abide by this. Because again, sign stealing has been going on for 100, 150 years in baseball. But if it's done the old school way, if it's done by, keen observation, but using tools that not every team has their ability to utilize, it's just unfair to give one team an advantage over another.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Maybe we're in a situation where you can just have a flunky up in the booth say, I'll just delete that. Can't imagine where I've heard that one before. I can't think of it. But anyway.
Exactly. Spygate Part 2. It's better than the first part. So
exactly.
Enjoy it.
Part 3, starring Charlie Sheen as Bill Belichick or something like that.
Exactly. With special cameo by Adam Gase.
Exactly. And Tim Tebow. He's going to have just a magical appearance as the new Mets manager. God help us.
Oh, God.
So I guess our last thoughts here, parting shots. Where do you think this is going to go as far as the Mets are concerned? Where do you think how this is going to end, and how quickly they're going to get a manager in here?
I think they're basically circling the wagons. I mean, at this point, I really think that I think Hansley Mullins is going to be the guy that's going to step in. I mean, it just makes the most sense. He was on a championship squad a few times under Bruce Bochy with the San Francisco Giants. Doesn't have the managerial as far as a head manager experience, but he seems like a baseball lifer, a guy that could easily calm this situation down. So I think that's ultimately the direction the Mets go. And for me, this has to be a check in Brodie Van Wagenen's resume. This has to be a major blemish on that resume for moving forward. And he's not only there to impress the Wilpon ownership group, which I think he's hardly done so far in his year plus as the GM, but now, of course, with the new ownership stepping in with Steve Cohen, he really has to start getting his act together, because right now Met fans are the ones that supported Beltran in the hiring are upset, and the ones that didn't want Beltran in the first place are saying, see, I told you so. So this is a lose-lose for Brodie Van Wagenen. So the way it ends for the Mets, stick with an internal process, hire the bench coach, promote him to manager, and hope that Brodie Van Wagenen can just stay in his office, stay in that owner's box, and not do any more damage to this team ahead of opening day.
Yeah, no phone calls to the dugout. That'll be good too.
Exactly.
I like the idea of Hensley Mullins. I would prefer him over a lot of these other candidates. Aside from like a Terry Collins or like a Bobby Valentine or somebody like that. As far as in-house is concerned, I think they're probably going to go Luis Rojas. I think they want to try to keep the young manager and the veteran bench coach dynamics. I think that's probably where they're going to go. It's not going to excite a lot of Met fans. But it is a guy who's been around a lot of these players in the minor leagues. I could see them going in that direction. It will be interesting because a couple months ago there was that rumor that Rojas wasn't ready. So we'll see. Maybe he's gotten ready in 2 months. I have no idea.
Well, it definitely won't be Edgardo Alfonso. That's for sure. I think they basically destroyed that relationship.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be him. I don't think it'll be Mike Piazza at the last second either.
No, exactly.
Hey, Mike, I know we unveiled your street sign. Can you be our manager for the rest of the season?
And how the Mets could, again, I had tried to use my sources with the Mets that said there was no announcement coming Thursday. I had reported that. It was a credible source. And then they went ahead and made the announcement anyway. But why, in any type of reality, why would you ever have Mike Piazza there for an event where you're unveiling a street named after him down in Port St. Lucie, when you have a managerial crisis on your hands and you're putting your owner, you're putting a Hall of Fame player that is, of course, going to be in front of the media firing squad that's going to get asked all these questions. For the Mets to even do that, it's just unthinkable. I don't know why they put those people in that kind of situation.
It was kind of weird because the announcement of Beltran's stepping down came almost minutes after the event took place. It was crazy. The whole thing was nuts. I don't know why they couldn't have just postponed the sign unveiling until the next day. Maybe even later in the day. We're there in Florida. It's not like it's going to rain or snow anytime soon, or at least may rain. But the weather's going to be pretty good down there in Port St. Lucie, so I don't know why they couldn't just wait. But it is what it is. The Mets had to do this. They had no choice. We'll see what happens from here on out. So for Rick Laughland, of course, who is a part of the Amazin Clubhouse on Maven Sports, Rick, just give a little shout out to you about Maven for that matter as well.
Yeah, you can find us at Amazin, just spelled like Mets, Amazin, AMAZIN, clubhouse.com, and we are part of...
It is part of Sports Illustrated. So, Rick, I do thank you for joining us tonight. Michael Cohen here with you. We'll talk to you next time.
All right, but that's our discussion on the Mets and their very, very odd and unfortunate managerial situation that they find themselves in here just 3.5 weeks before spring training begins. So we'll be keeping an eye on this, of course. When the Mets do announce a manager, we'll talk about it at that point again as well. So remember to stay tuned here to the Sports Talk Nation. Follow us on Facebook.com/OpenMyProgram. Like and subscribe right here to the Sports Talk Nation here on the YouTube channel. Remember to follow us on Twitter at OpenMikeNJ. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Sports Talk Nation.